It's time to look at the waiver wire in fantasy basketball. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and they didn't believe in us. God did. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook, actually. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet, win or lose. Go to fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. Are you a double banger? 2024 New Year's resolution. Be a double banger. Watch the video, download the audio. If you're on the audio side of things and someone said to me, hey, it's a great way to get people to be double bangers, Josh, just say something completely stupid so that people listening then have to rush to YouTube to comment on it. So there you go. I'll say that now. You know what I reckon? LeBron's overrated. Probably not a top 10 player of all time. You guys are just all up on his nuts, and it's all media that's pushing it. Be a double banger. Come across and have a chat. All right, let's talk about what we need to talk about here. We are talking waiver wire. Across fantasy basketball, you know the structure of these shows. Let's start with must roster. If you haven't tuned into the show for a few weeks, we have changed the definition of must roster slightly. So we're looking a little bit more shorter term sort of stuff in terms of who are some guys who are available in over 35% of leagues who I think in the next couple of weeks are guys that just should be on rosters. And then we can reassess shit later on when it changes or if it changes. Number one there on that list remains Hartenstein because he sits below 65% rostered. There's still no clarification on the Mitch Robinson situation. I was trying to do some research on this today about it. We heard that he was out 8 to 10 weeks. We heard that, yeah, Obi, it's bloody terrible news. I know. The Knicks, their communication's dreadful. So that they're initially saying 8 to 10 weeks, and then they apply for that DPE, which means they've got to be out until June. So the only reason that you would apply for that is you think you've got a chance of getting it, and you think that the league doctors will agree with your doctors that he's out for that long. And then Tom Thibodeau, legendary front office combatant, said, nah, he's 8 to 10 weeks. And they go, well, why did you apply? Well, you have to ask Leon. Yeah, we would love to ask Leon Rose that question, Tom, except the man has not taken a single question from media in 3 years on the job. So nobody can ask him that question. So everything points towards Mitchell Robinson being out for the season, but we also don't know. And the other thing is, if that DPE application gets rejected, that doesn't automatically mean 8 to 10 weeks. All that means is the NBA doctor said he's not out until June 15th. There's a big difference between February the 20th and June 15th. I still don't think there's any reason in holding Mitchell Robinson. I don't think there's any reason. Always, if you've got an open IL slot, and I'm using this a lot in leagues, if I've got open IL slots, I just grab an injured player and put him there. Especially when it's a league where it doesn't cost me an ad or I've got extras, whatever. But holding and wasting a spot is pointless. All that goes back to saying is there's zero reason to avoid having Isaiah Hartenstein on your roster. I've got Derek Lively there. This is category leagues, so he should just be rostered everywhere in all category leagues. It wasn't a great game yesterday for the rabbit hunter Alex Caruso, and like I said earlier, if we're talking about the value of a must-roster player, things might change in 2 weeks. I don't know what happens when Zach LaVine comes back. Does Caruso move to the bench? Does Pat Williams move to the bench? Does LaVine get immediately traded? I don't know. But I do know that Caruso, even in 27 minutes a night, is enough to be a rosterable player. So for now, we roster him. We wait to see when LaVine comes back. It's like one of those things as well. Like, what do we do when this guy comes off IR? Who do we drop? We don't do anything. We figure it out later on. And that's the same with Caruso. We hold him, we deal with it, we enjoy it, and then we move on later on if we need to. I've got the two other Knicks players there, the big Ragu, Donte DiVincenzo and Josh Hart. There are just a couple of extra minutes for those guys, like DiVincenzo from 24 to 28 maybe, Hart from 28 to 30, and that's enough to make them guys to have. There's no guarantee they're going to be excellent or great or even very, very good. But that extra couple of minutes by replacing quickly with Juice McBride It does help. The last guy on that list is Grayson Allen. He's still woefully under-rostered. Durant's currently out, but it doesn't even matter to me. Allen is providing enough value, even on a healthy team, which we never see on that squad, and he just needs to be rostered. And I know there's a hesitancy with Grayson Allen because he's Grayson Allen, but I think we've got to get over that part of it. The points leagues situation, some of these names you can just consider must roster for category as well, like the first guy there, Trayce Jackson-Davis. You're playing 24 to 26 minutes as a starter for the Warriors for the foreseeable future is enough that you just got to grab him everywhere. He's only 40% rostered, so all points, all categories, I would add him. I only had room for 6 on the category list, but he's still on that list. Hartenstein, Derek Lively, are names we already talked about, but they are must-roster points guys. I think Jaden Ivey is a must-roster in both formats as well. I'm going to give him a lean in points leagues because sometimes he can have some subpar field goals and free throws, which do hurt. But we've gotten over this nonsense of him playing 10 minutes a night while Killian Hayes gets 27 and Marcus Sasser and all those guys get prioritized. We've gotten over whatever that was that Monty Williams was doing. And now it is, potentially moving forward. Now, if I'm going to reference Anita Ward and ringing my bell, for Jaden Ivey, it's time for Yaz. The only way is up. Ding. Jakaris LeVert, I do think you want him in a category league too, but you definitely want him in a points league. And we reassess when Darius Garland eventually returns. And the other one there is the speaker, Keontae George, who you're not dealing with the issues with his field goal percentage in points leagues. Default points leagues, that's what I'm talking about. Default scoring points leagues. If your points league system dings field goal percentage pretty significantly and he is the 160th best player, then he is not a must-roster guy. But in 30, 31 minutes a night, in a regular points league, he is. And that's where I'm seeing this with Conte. Even though he's coming off the bench, there's enough there for me to be grabbing him. I'm less interested in a category league at this point. He's sort of just not... The injury sort of set him back. He was stepping forward, and I do think he will become a must-roster guy. At the moment, I do prefer Scoot Henderson over him, even though that rotation is still a big question mark. But you could have speculative value for Keontae in a category, but he's a little bit more secure, I think, in a points league format at this point. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. The holidays are done. Well, until the next one. But 2024 is here. And there are some things I'm sure that you want to keep the same about your life, but there are also things that you want to change. So what you can do here, we often get to the stage of 2024, we've got to change everything, we've got to make all these moves and adjustments and all that sort of stuff. But maybe we should stop being obsessed about this new year, new you, and just think about the things that you're already doing well. And how do we get into that mindset of celebrating ourselves and celebrating our successes? Therapy is a great way to help you focus on your strengths, recognize your achievements so you can ditch extreme resolutions and make changes that really stick. Small ones, important ones, versus big sweeping things, which can often lead to more problems than they fix. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient and flexible and suited to your schedule. You fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a therapist. If you don't like that match and it doesn't work out, well, you can just change it with no fee, because that's really important, is getting a therapist who fits exactly what you need. So celebrate the progress that you've already made. Go to betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. That will bring us, after looking at must-roster players, into talking about droppable players, a quick definition. You do not have to quickly act and drop these players. That is not what this is about. These are just guys that if they're sitting on your roster, you should be looking and going, do I need to? Are they fully must-roster players? And there is a difference there. A player being not a must-roster player is not the same as a player that you have to go and drop. Have to. HAFTA. It's not one of those guys, right? These are players that, if they're sitting there on your roster, I'd probably look at some of those names and go, come on, what are we doing? Like, you don't need to be holding this guy necessarily. But some of them are just names that if they're sitting there, I go, well, if he actually moved on, I'd think it would be okay. And the first name on that list really falls into that category, and that's Paul Washington Jr. Washington, despite every dickhead in the world being out, Mark Williams, the Mellow Ball, Gordon Hayward, Brandon Miller last game, they still keep him under 30 minutes every game for some reason. I don't understand why. I think he's actually a pretty good player, but they're keeping him in these very low-minute roles. His production is very up and down. Some would say sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit, as he's taken over that crown from Jay Crowder. And I just don't know that you need to hold him. If I'm in a 10 There's just no way.
Get that garbage out of here!
In a 12, I don't think it's necessary. You don't have to drop him, of course. I've got him rostered in a 12-team league, but I look at it every day and go, well, if someone better comes up, he's gone. Because what is the upside here? That's the question I think we ask with a lot of these. The next one is, well, the next two are two players in Toronto. That is Dennis Schroeder and RJ Barrett. I'd be very, very comfortable dropping RJ Barrett in a category league. We know what RJ Barrett is in a category league, and that is not very good, and I don't expect much to change in Toronto. Dennis Schroeder's a tougher one because he's had some really strong value this season. And last game, he still played 30 minutes with Emmanuel quickly there. But I don't think that's going to be the case every day. Even at the moment with what he's doing, like, is Schroeder even a top 100 guy? Like, he's not. He's giving okay assists, but if they push him back to 26 minutes a night, which I do think will happen, it's not going to be great. So this is a little bit preemptive, and I'm not always a big preemptive fan of moves, but if you're looking, say, end of the week, and I don't like to do this, but Zach LaVine's active and ready to go, Dennis Schroeder's on your team, like, I don't think it's going to kill you to move on. The path forward for Schroeder is not particularly bright. It's not particularly aligned with great value. And often you make those moves, you go, well, he actually probably still could help, but I just have to do it. And I think that you'd feel okay about doing it. We go to two Utah Jazz legends next. The Baptist John Collins is one of them. And I think that's really clear. They are starting him for God knows what reason, but his minutes are well down, even when he was playing 30 minutes a night to begin the season. How good was he actually? Like, the answer is not very good. So I don't think we need to be so excited about holding on to him. If I'm in a 14-team league, I'm actually debating whether I hold him. In a 12, it's a very easy decision, I think.
Get that garbage out of here!
And the other Utah Jazz legend is Russell Westbrook. With Kawhi Leonard back, he's back under 20 minutes. So if Kawhi goes out again, maybe you can stream Westbrook in because we saw his minutes increase. And I'd expect if Harden is hurt, Westbrook would be worth an add if you can deal with the efficiency issues. But he's not a guy you just have to hold on to. And he's still rostered in like 83% of leagues, which is obviously way too high. And the last one on that list is Cam Thomas, because he's bad. For category leagues, he just is not very good. He is completely in the doghouse at the moment. The minutes are well down. The efficiency is shitful. All his advanced stats are terrible. He doesn't lead to winning for this team, and they are benching him rightfully so. There is definitely a path for Thomas to have a hot streak where he drops 40 for 3 games in a row and gets 30 minutes back. That is distinctly possible. But let me throw this at you. When Lonnie Walker returns, is it out of the question that the Nets play Lonnie Walker over Cam Thomas? I am not a Lonnie Walker fan. Like, I do not think Lonnie Walker is a great game-changing player. I don't. But is it out of the question that Walker plays ahead of Thomas? And I think if you really assess it, the answer is no, that's not out of the question. And with the harm that Thomas is doing at the moment, I just don't see him being a must-hold play. You don't have to drop him, of course, but I just don't see it being a must-roster situation. For points leagues, when I looked at my projections, and I look at these guys who are outside the top 40 rest of the season, only 3 really high-valued names came up. Number 1 on that list was Budrick Hield, who, the last couple of games for him stink. And differently to category leagues, even when Hield is absolutely rolling, in a points league, he's not that good. So when things are on the downswing, and there's uncertainty with him and Nembhard and Brown and Neesmith and Mathurin and Timmy John McConnell putting up big numbers recently, like, the stress and the issue with this with Hield is not worth it. If he moved back to starting, I'd probably change my mind, but in a bench role, he's just not it. Dennis Schroeder and John Collins we already spoke about as guys that are potentially droppable in category leagues, and I think the same thing runs in a points league. As for Hield in a category league, I'd be okay if he moved on there. I'd give him a little bit more leniency, but it's not massive. Some of the other names like your Barretts and Washington and Westbrook, who are on the category droppable list, they're slightly safer in a points league situation. Like, 17 minutes of Westbrook's not enough to hold in a points league, but he's a lot more secure in a points league than he is in a category league. And Barrett is a definite hold in a points league, and Washington probably is as well, even with the frustration with some of his lower minutes, which are happening at the moment. Let's look at the most added players over the last 48 hours or so. Number 1 on that list is Larry Nance in New Orleans. The last 3 games, he and Jonas Valanciunas have split minutes. In a 14-team league, I'm all about adding Nance In a 12, he's fine because they just had the back-to-back. I don't think this is going to be anything that lasts as a 12-team league guy. And his overall upside is maybe best case top 95, maybe. Even though he has been top 100 since he returned, there's on the back of a big double-double and a 5 steal game, so I'm not really buying that too much. But, yeah, by all means, like, he's someone that's interesting. We've already talked about the next 2 names, and that is Donte DiVincenzo and Trayce Jackson-Davis. Yeah, look, you just add those guys. That's pretty simple. The top 3 most added players on Yahoo, not including some of those names, because I think Nance was the top on Yahoo as well. Number 1 there is Simone Fontecchio. People love to chase a big performance. He was big last game. Remember, you do not get that performance added on. Fontecchio is about 250th this season. He's like 190th over the last 2 weeks, playing 28 minutes a night. He did have a really good game. And maybe that turns into something more. I don't know. But there's still the problem of Markkanen, Fontecchio, and Collins, and Kessler, and Olynyk there. And Fontecchio's not stable. He's not consistent. He doesn't have a set role. If you're adding him to play on Wednesday with 12 games, I'm not sure what your roster situation is. That just seems like way too many players, or way too many teams that have added Simone Fontecchio. That is almost the definition of chasing. Like, I would much prefer to add the guy under him there, the bucket, John Kuminga, who's up almost 2,600 spots, or the guy under him, Dracaris Levert, up almost 2,500 as well. I would much rather have those guys over Fontecchio. I added Kuminga in his history pickup today. There is some issues with his percentages, or not his percentages, his 3-point percentage, but his free throw percentage as well. His defensive stats aren't awesome, but I love what he did last game. The Draymond pushback situation, or what is going on with him in practicing, makes me think that Kuminga's going to have a little bit more stability, even though he'd only been playing 25 a night. I like what I saw yesterday, so I went and added him. And I think that's an approach to take. He's more of a points than category league guy, but I'd much rather go Kuminga and Levert over Fontecchio. Maybe I'm wrong on Fontecchio, but he's like a 29-year-old second-year player who's been inconsistent, and I'm still not secure on the role. And I'm not sure what he's going to do outside of giving points and threes anyway. He's not the highest of priority. Maybe he moves into that Leaky Beasley, Norman Powell, Timmy Hardaway, points and threes stream bucket. That is distinctly possible. But outside of that, I'm not really sure why we'd get so excited there. What should we do now? I'm just working out which direction we're going to go. No, we're going to do this. Because today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there is still time to get in on the action on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 moneyline bet. That is $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. Don't worry about your team winning. Don't worry about any of that stuff. Don't worry about it even being a moneyline bet. It's just $5. You chuck $5 on, you win, you lose, who cares? You get the bonus bets in there, 150, and it is so easy to use FanDuel. They've got live same-game parlays. You can find bets in their new Explore tab. They've also got, I guess people like it, parlay hubs. Well, not parlay hubs, just one of them. One big boy parlay hub, where you can go in and create your parlays, and you can find popular parlays to parlay into some parlays. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a mixed metaphor layup. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. Okay, that will now actually bring us into talking about the most dropped players off the waiver wire, looking at the numbers across Basketball Monster and on Yahoo. Number 1 on that list is Dante Exum. He's down 32%. His first game with Kyrie back wasn't very good, so people did react there, but then when he got ruled out for Wednesday, they reacted even harder, and that's okay. Like, if there is somebody you want to go and add, Exum is totally okay to hold, but he's also totally okay to drop, and the injury now compounds that, so that's okay. Paul Reed, the very obvious one. When Joel Embiid is hurt, we go back and add him, and then you get frustrated, even though he puts up okay numbers. That seems to be the thing. I think people think that when Embiid is out, well, everyone's talking about Paul Reed. Why isn't he giving me 30 and 20 with 4 steals and 7 blocks? Like, if he has 11, 8, 2 steals, 2 blocks, that's still pretty bloody good. I think people just expect his unbelievable run when Embiid is out, when he's just solid enough. He's good enough to be a rosterable player. Irrespective, Embiid back, Reed gone. Eric Gordon down 21%. I know he wasn't super great last game, but Durant is out. The Suns have a strong quality games schedule nearly every week, basically. I think they've got the most quality games in the entire NBA. Gordon plays his 30 minutes a night. I just wouldn't be that quick to move on. And the same goes with the number 1 dropped player on Yahoo, Pat Williams. Now, I know yesterday he played 10 minutes, he didn't do anything, and that's true. But, man, if you don't score a point in one game, people just dump. And this is where I hope that we have a little bit of an advantage on this channel over a bunch of people. I'm not telling you that Patrick Williams is good. In fact, I don't think he is at all. But what I do know is he's like a top 105 player over the last month. Zach LaVine may come back this week. We don't actually know how that's going to impact Williams at all. And he had one bad game that he got hurt in, like in the first couple of minutes, and everyone just drops him. I don't even know that he's ruled out today. Have we even just had the information on that yet? Let's have a look. No, he still hasn't even been ruled out for today. That is just overreaction city, I think. Especially with a guy on a back-to-back. It's never a great idea. If you've got someone in the middle of a back-to-back, what advantage are you getting from dropping him? Like, you're not getting a games played advantage. What's the point of it? I don't get it. Anyway, Cam Thomas dropped. Yep, we've already talked about that. And Cody Martin dropped. Well, fair enough. He started yesterday. He was all right. I think he's more of a 14 team than a 12er. But if you added him for the Monday, Tuesday back-to-back, you got what you needed. You got the games on Monday, Tuesday. You got middling production, but 2-for-1 works. And now you could go ahead, get on with your life, and move on. Let's talk hot players. The guys over the last week who are top 100 legends. Kelly Olynyk is in the top 100. I'll continue to tell you. Maybe this even transports into the Fontecchio thing. I have no idea what to make of the Jazz rotations. I'm honest with you every time that I speak, right? I'm not here to obfuscate or to lie or to bullshit or to hide information for my teams or tell you about this guy's shit because I missed out on picking him up, which some people seem to think that I do, when honestly, I just don't care that much about what happens on my particular team versus providing quality information and a product, right? That's what my focus is more on. So I'm not here to lie at any point. So when I tell you that I just have no idea what the Jazz are going to do, it's honesty. It doesn't come across well for me to say I've got no idea. I don't even have a strong lean because it changes every single game. Olynyk can be great in 19 minutes. He can be terrible in 19 minutes. He can be great in 28. He can be terrible in 28. But I don't even know what he's going to do on a game-by-game basis or what his minutes are going to be. But at the moment, he's producing. So, hey, well, let's go with it. And then he'll probably shit the bed and have 2, 3, and 1. And they'll be like, what did you do? Well, I told you. I didn't know. And I still don't know. But he's playing well. The Big Ragu, we've discussed many times already. Norman Powell's actually in the top 100 over the last week. That's probably on the back of that 22-point game the other day. He still is in that widely available streaming points and threes bucket, which has just so many different guys. Another reason that, especially mid-rounds of drafts, don't overvalue threes. It's like when it comes in, like the start of this season, when Buddy Hield was getting picked at pick 70. I was like, this is ridiculous. Absolutely not. I'm not taking Buddy Hield till after pick 100. A, he's going to come off the bench. B, the threes get overvalued a lot, and you could just find these guys everywhere. They always pop up. So when you are paying attention in your drafts, and even maybe at the top of drafts, the guys who hit tons of threes, and that is one of their best 1 or 2 categories, maybe we need to pull that back a bit because points and threes, and it's more three streaming because the points guys you get off the wire are still below average points players. But the threes are just, they're everywhere. There's so many guys that we can find that can do that. And Powell is one of those players. Al Horford's top 100 over the last week. It just is in that spot where he's moving into, I don't know whether I hold or I drop. I think he's a drop. But now they've moved into a situation when whenever a starter is out, Al Horford is in. But he only played 19 minutes last game. That's not really enough. And if he plays 27 minutes in 30% of the games and 19 in 50% and sits out 20% of the games, it's probably not going to be worth it. But he's had a nice little run here. Larry Nance, we've talked about already. And a name that I didn't expect to be talking about in the top 100 is Luke Cornett. Now, a lot of that came because there was one game where he went bananas where they set everybody. But he is that third center behind Porzingis and Horford. He's jumped back ahead of the Pascal Donata, Neemias Queta. You just got to keep it in mind. If Porzingis or Horford is out, that Cornett at least moves into being a somewhat interesting streamer player. Let's look at some injury replacement options. Who are some guys for the short term who are interesting if guys are out? And number one on that list is Chimezie Metu. He is starting for Kevin Durant. I don't know how long Kevin Durant is out, but I do know that Kevin Durant has a hamstring injury. He's missed 2 games. So I'd feel okay about thinking there's a chance that Durant is out for the rest of this week. And if you get it in time, you can add Metu for today's games. as long as Mark Doubtful Williams is out, Nick Richards is the guy to roster. And the Hornets will continue to list Williams doubtful, and I will continue to troll their social media accounts to continue to call them out on it, even though they don't care. As long as he is doubtful, and Williams has basically said he's not back this week, he's still got no timetable, so we just keep going with Richards. I'm going to throw Jabari Walker on this list because John Ayton probably doesn't play this week. You could throw Duop Reith in there, or Ibu Baji, or God forbid Moses Brown if you're playing a who's got the least talent league. In terms of Walker, I do believe that from the 25th of March onwards, he will be a standard league player because I think Jeremy Grant's knee will swell up at that point, surprisingly. At the moment, he's at least useful with Ayton out. Not a super strong one, but he's in that mix. With Jimmy Butler and General Soreness, with his foot injury, Duncan Robinson, Jaime Huckers is already rostered everywhere, so he's the guy with Butler out that's putting up better numbers. But Robinson's still widely available, over 50% of leagues. And with Martin and Butler and Highsmith all out, Robinson is a 12-team league option for now. I've got the wild thing, Jayshawn Tate there. That skews more to deeper leagues. That's with Dylan Brooks out. Tate is starting, and now Eason is also out again with a leg problem. So we are really looking at Tate as a streamable option for 12s, but probably not really, more for 14-teamers. And then we go really deep into our bag because Zach Collins is out. Wembanyama's on some nonsense minutes restriction. And last game we saw Don Barlow play over Sandro Mamakilishvili. Now, if you play an ESPN, I'm sorry, you're probably going to have to wait a couple more years. Barlow's only been in the league for 2 seasons, but he's not available to be added. So, can't expect too much from the worldwide leader. Don Barlow is an option, though. If we're in a situation where Zach Collins is still out, and then Wemby sits, we're in here. That's, again, Tate and Barlow are more deeper leagues, but there's definitely opportunities open up. I actually really believe in Don Barlow as a rotation player. I've been impressed with him through the games we saw last season, the games we saw this season as well. I just think he's a good player. And I think that's an interesting deeper league look, that a name that you just got to tweak in your head if we get a game that Wemby sits where Zach Collins is out. That is something that you should at least just pay a little bit of attention to. Lastly, just go through 6 other names that we need to discuss to wrap up this show. Number 1 on that list is Ayo Dosunmu. He's getting good minutes at the moment. I think that gets completely quashed when Zach LaVine is back. I'm not a big Ayo fan, but he has upped his usage, which is important. His efficiency's been relatively strong. And for the time being, especially if Pat Williams does happen to miss and LaVine's return date gets pushed back, then we do have to at least consider thinking about Dosunmu. I'm going to throw a couple of paces in here. I could throw 7 paces in here. I'm going to put Ben Mathurin and Aaron Nesmith. Nesmith probably does need to be rostered, although I'm less than convinced that he remains that guy. And I put Mathurin's name in here because everyone's excited when Mathurin puts up a big game. I just do not buy it. You can stream him in a points league. I'm not all that interested in him in a category league. I will throw Isaiah Jackson in that mix. We're also still watching Jalen Smith. And there's Tim McConnell, who, if Nembhard's going to be out, McConnell is going to be worth at least a 14-team ad, maybe a 12. Isaiah Jackson is at least a 14-team league option as well. If Smith is going to start as the power forward, Jackson gets the backup minutes at center, and he can maybe even sniff 12-team value. There's a lot going on in Indiana, and I'm not certain about any of it. Brown, Nembhard, Hield, McConnell, Smith, Nesmith, Jackson. Toppin'. There's just so many weird situations there. I'm going to throw Goga Badadze in there as well because he is starting over Wendell Carter. He played more minutes than Wendell last game. I don't hate that as an ad. I'm not sure that it holds with him starting, but what is interesting is they're playing Mo Wagner as the power forward now, the backup power forward. That is because Ingles and Isaac are out, I'm believing. But it's Badadze and Wendell Carter who are playing at center, and I'm not sure that either of them is a must roster in 12s. I'm okay with having Wendell, but I'm also okay with adding Goga. With the injuries in Cleveland, Isaac Okoro is playing the best basketball of his career. His upside is relatively limited, but he's scoring efficiently, he's scoring well, and he's getting good minutes. That's at least worthy of us considering him, and he's available basically everywhere. And the last name, again, I do not think this guy is very good at all, but he is starting. He played 28 minutes last game in Sacramento, and his name is Chris Duarte. And he can generate some steals, he can hit some threes, he can be a sort of passer. His last game was okay, and he goes from a guy where he was a complete afterthought to me, because he was literally out of the rotation, playing 0 minutes. But if you're starting with a somewhat fantasy-friendly game and you play 28 minutes, you've got to be discussed. So in 14-team leagues, I'm all about adding Duarte. In 12s, I'd be a little bit more hesitant, but he moves into the Leaky Beasley Memorial Stream bucket. He's in that list now. where we could consider it, and we really just need to watch to see which direction it ends up going. And that, all of you legends, is the end of today's Waiver Wire show. If you are not a double banger, why don't you become one? And jump over here on video, hit the thumbs up, debate with me that LeBron's not top 10 of all time. It's anyone who thinks that is clearly just not been watching basketball. Because, if you watch the games, you would know that. Subscribe, thumbs up, notification bell, Anita Ward, yes, we're doing it all. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.